is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network. It's time for the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast, a show dedicated to all things related to the Old Dominion Wrestling program. On the web at monarchmatcast.com. Now, here's your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, and 2004 ODU alumnus, Jason Bryant.
Episode 33 of the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast. Jason Bryant here with you for another season of Monarch Wrestling. Today talking with head wrestling coach Steve Martin as we approach a new season of Monarch Wrestling in Norfolk. We got an exciting schedule. We got some wrestlers coming back off redshirt that we're excited about. And another trip to St. Louis is at the end of the year. That is the goal. March is the goal. Coach Martin, first of all, what's the summer like been for you and for Old Dominion Wrestling?
We've had a very productive summer. Our kids were on campus doing camps and off campus doing camps from, pretty much the middle of June until the end of July. So we had the opportunity, get all of our freshmen on campus working out during the course of the summer, doing camps and whatnot. So we've seen a lot of big games. We had a very high participation rate. So I'd say 90% of our kids were on campus pretty much the whole summer and getting better every day. And some of them never even left. They stayed on campus, after our training days. I think it was about June 10th or like July 17th. A lot of them stayed on campus until August 1st. And probably 10 or 15 guys doing individual workouts and, voluntary workouts with coaches as well as with the strict training staff. And then pretty much everybody came back in the middle of August. So, we kind of finished up our competition schedule with the University Nationals, and then we gave kids a couple weeks off in June. So we've had a very productive summer.
What's one thing you've learned in your time at Old Dominion that the summer classes and getting the freshmen to school in the summer have really kind of helped, not just athletically in terms of getting workouts in with new teammates, but also academically?
Yeah, academically, it definitely helps out. They can get acclimated. They get to meet our academic advisors and know where they're coming from, so they can get on the set schedule. And they get around, they just get in more of a college atmosphere of the room as well, so they can kind of see what it's like instead of showing up, on August 25th and experience it for the first time. So they can get a lot of the rude awakenings of college wrestling, out of the way during their summer months. So it's a great concept to be able to get the kids on campus through the summer. Get their technique down, they get memory tougher, and they learn how to fight through that, fatigue zone that is much, much different in college than in high school.
As we look at what's coming back, the MAC rankings came out over the weekend, and Brandon Jeske returning a three-time NCAA qualifier, as is Jack Decco. Kevin Beasley coming back off not just a red shirt, but an Olympic red shirt, where he was second at the World Team Trials 2 years ago. Trained in the off-season for the Olympic Games. Did not have the opportunity to make the team, but for a guy like Kevin Beasley to come back off of an Olympic red shirt, to show that Olympic caliber and national team caliber kids can wrestle at Old Dominion. What's it mean to have him as part of the program?
Well, it just shows all the freestyle and, Greco guys that are out there that, we have the ability to be able to put them on world teams, and we support that 100%. Our goal is for kids to make, Olympic and world teams, and we emphasize that very heavily, as well as, being national champions. But he's an invaluable asset to our program. We think that he has a legitimate shot of not only winning a national title, but placing very highly. So, a kid like that is also very good in the room because he's a natural team leader and just helps out our whole overall atmosphere having him back, on the team and on campus because, upper weights are invaluable. they can win or lose dual meets for you.
As we move into the schedule portion, we'll talk more about the lineup as the season draws near. With October 26th, the Blue Silver Intra Squad coming to the Jarrett Athletic Facility, 7 p.m. Again, the Intra Squad match, something that really did not exist at Old Dominion prior to your arrival as head coach, and this is something we're in double digits of years that we've done this. It gives the fans the first chance to see Monarch wrestlers this year. And, what is it about the intra-squad match that we used to not see it a whole lot nationally? Now it seems like every school has one, and every school's making it a fan event.
Yeah, I think it's really more for a fan event because, they get the chance to put on the singlet, do a weigh-in, put on the singlet, compete in front of a crowd before the it's a good opportunity to get in front of a crowd to simulate a match situation. It kind of shows you where the pecking order is among the guys in the team. But at the same time, to be honest with you, the results of the inter-squad don't mean a whole lot to us. A kid could win an inter-squad match and beat 3 or 4 of his teammates, but get in front of the lights and not be able to perform. And you could have, then again, on the other end, you could have a kid that doesn't do very well in the inter squad, but, does much better in real competition. So, but we do take a lot away from it because it tells us where the kids' patterns are and what we need to work on with each individual to correct them technically. As well as, they get in that match for the first time and, your first weigh-in, you're probably going to feel some effects. So that's good for them to be able to feel those effects when results don't count versus when they do count when they go on your win-loss record. So the inter-squad is a great concept, and we look forward to that night in a couple of weeks.
One thing that's different this year is the pre-match socials have gone down the block to the corner of 49th and Hampton Boulevard at the Edge at 4814 Hampton Boulevard. The Edge pre-match socials will be there. The Alumni Weekend social will also be there prior to the football game with Southern Miss. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But, having a spot for fans to come and mingle before matches, that's a good thing to create some fan excitement before the first whistle blows at the Constant Center.
Yeah, and it's like 2 blocks away, so it's it's a great, to have an event. And, we're lucky that Philly Ball, and the owner of the Edge, is supporting that for us. And, it'll be a great atmosphere for fans to come by, have some food, everything's free food and drinks. You can't turn that down. And then they can just walk 2 blocks up to the Constant Center right before the match. We'll probably shut it down about 15 minutes before each match starts, so the fans have enough time to take their places in the stands. So we're looking for that. We're looking forward to that because we have not done it in the past, and we think it's a better concept.
Now, as we talk about the Alumni Weekend, November 12th, 13th, centered around the Southern Miss football game on that Saturday, and then nationally ranked Missouri coming in on Sunday. And this is a number of times we've done this with the Alumni Weekend centered around a football game. It's not just you're coming in for a match, but you get a football game and a home wrestling match. And talk about the synergy there between getting the home football game, getting people to come back to campus. I know for me, I'm raising my hand. I'm going to be there that weekend, so it's a double dip for me. I get to watch football and actually announce some wrestling, so I know other fans are in the same boat.
Well, again, what we're going to do is the day before the match, the football game's around 3:30, around, between 12 and 1, we're going to start that social over the Edge so all of our alumni can get together and intermingle, and they will, walk over to the football game, check out the football game, and, a lot of our alumni have not probably been to football games, especially the ones from out of state, and maybe even some in the area, so haven't been to ODU football game. It is a pretty cool production. I think we just sold out our 52nd home football game in a row, so every football game's a home, is a sellout. So they're going to be able to experience that. And then, the next day, again, we'll have another social at the end before the match starts, and then they can come over and watch us compete against Missouri, which is probably has a very legitimate shot of, being a top 3 or 4 team this year. They pretty much, I don't know if they have a weak weight class. I'm not sure about their whole lineup. I haven't really looked it up and down. We've we're kind of more concerned with our guys. But, you know, we're going to have our hands full there, but we're really looking forward. We're thankful that we're in the MAC and have the opportunity to have teams like Missouri come into us, you know, every year, you know, every other year to be able to visit us. Because that's basically going to show us where we stand. And, you know, there's all kinds of crazy matchups in those matches, and I'm not going to go through those, but competing against them is definitely, you know, you knock off a Tiger, you're going to be probably ranked inside the top 10, because most of their guys are probably ranked inside the top 10 in the lineup. So we're really looking forward to that. That should be a great atmosphere at the 10, you know, for alumni, again, that have not been to matches. You know, we do have suites that are going to be available for the alumni to go up and check out the matches from. It'd be just like going to a home basketball game. So they can continue to basically go up to the suites after they go to the Edge and continue to check it all out. So I think it's a great weekend. We're hoping we get some people from out of state to come in, you know, that have not done so in the past. You know, Coach Mike Dixon is the contact person. You know, he can be contacted at njDixon@ODU.edu. He's the one that's going to basically be reaching out to alumni and taking a head count. And I think it's a great concept. It worked very well for us 2 years ago when we competed against Missouri, because we had a social football game, and then the next day we had the match. Had another social, you know, and then the match against Missouri. So we're thankful that we can do that again.
Yeah, as we look at the upcoming schedule, this year you got Missouri at home, you got NC State, Buffalo, Duke, Ohio, Kent State all on the schedule. But I want to circle that Missouri date again. And while we're talking about coming to see the Old Dominion athletes, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that Missouri does have a draw on their team. His name's Jaden Cox. He's a two-time national champion, but he just recently won the bronze medal at the Olympics in Rio. So even though we're rooting on Monarch Nation as they come in, it's also an opportunity for fans to see an Olympian take on a junior world team member in Kevin Beasley. So, you know, international guys going right at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an awesome matchup, especially for Kevin. Right off the bat, he gets to wrestle a national champ and a bronze medalist from the Olympics. I know he's looking forward to it. You know, looking forward to the scrap as well as the coaching staff. So, but really, they have a lot of ranked guys that, you know, we're going to have to compete very well against them. And that's what the training phase in the next month will all be about. You know, getting ready for that dual meet against them, because you know, Missouri comes into town, they're going to attract people to the event.
As we look at the schedule, you know, some coaches go tournament heavy, dual meet heavy based on what type of team they have, whether you think they're a strong tournament team or a strong dual meet team. What was the philosophy in this year's schedule in terms of hitting certain events? Okay, you're going to the Midlands, you got teams going to Lock Haven, Virginia duels, but you know, you're not hitting Vegas, you're not hitting the Scuffle this year. I mean, that kind of changes every year depending on the type of team you've got. So what went into this year's schedule?
Well, I think our first event, you know, that we're going to be wrestling in, you're probably going to have a lot of the teams that went to Binghamton, I think, are coming down to the Hokie Open. It's not called that anymore. I'm not even sure what the event's called, but it's basically the Virginia Tech Open. You know, that's going to be a very, very important event, because we're going to be able to get to wrestle nationally ranked guys left and right in that event. And the second tournament we decided to go to was the Midlands. You know, I really like the Midlands. We have a lot of Midwest kids on our team. Their parents will be getting to watch them to compete. You know, we have several guys from, you know, Illinois and Michigan on our team, and, you know, the Midwest in general. And what we'll do with that is the day after Christmas, our whole team will meet out at Northwestern, and then we'll train there for 2 days before the tournament even starts, so we can get acclimated instead of flying in the day before, flying a couple days before. And that event, I mean, you know, it's kind of a critic's choice, and what event is tougher. But, you know, I looked down at the other day, and a lot of our guys that are pretty good, they're going to see a lot of good competition. You win the Midlands, you're going to get a high seed in some ways. That's basically the bottom line at the end of the day. So the Midlands has gotten extremely tougher. And, you know, we'll get a chance to wrestle teams like Iowa and Nebraska that we would not hit during the year. So, you know, I'm a fan of the Midlands, you know. you're Midlands champ, I know you're going to be on the Big Ten Network, and that's another thing that helps. That just helps us out with recruiting in general. We're starting to hit the state of Illinois is pretty heavy in recruiting, and so that'll help us out. So the parents of student athletes in Illinois can see that we will be actually coming back in their state, multiple times, because we wrestled Northern Illinois too this year. So, but I like both of those events. Philosophy behind the scheduling, you can only wrestle so many dual meets, and that's why we put a third event, the Virginia Duels. We don't have to go to it, but we love the Virginia Duels because it's a home event for us. It's only 15 minutes away from campus. And again, you'll see another 5 or 6 top 20 teams there. So, we like where our schedule is. Vegas is always an issue for us because it's kind of around the exam period. So we don't want to pull our kids out of exams, and I would never want to put our kids in 2 meat grinders in the same month, which would be Vegas and Midlands. We would never do that. So we think it's more important to have one coming back off Christmas event and before Christmas.
And one thing of note for people that are looking to go to the Midlands right around the new year is Northwestern's Welsh Ryan Arena under construction. So that's actually going to be off campus this year. It'll be out in Hoffman Estates. And no, that's not a subdivision. That's actually the name of a suburb at the Sears Center. So keep an eye out there, as that's going to be probably about 30, 40 minutes away from it typically is. But Northwestern undergoing some renovations there. So keep that in mind. And other events to take note of course, the MAC schedule, super competitive, but Navy back on the schedule again, this time up in Annapolis. And one of the bigger crowds, of course, being at a big naval area in Norfolk, but rekindling the rivalry there with Navy. That's a good thing. That's a win-win for both programs.
Yeah, Joel Sherritt was a teammate of mine at Iowa, and, we thought it made perfect sense to be able to wrestle. We could never really get the event going until Joel got there, but once Joel got there, I knew that we'd be able to get it going pretty quick, because he brings his guys down there, then they can go over to the Navy base and meet with the SEALs and all that type of stuff. So it is a win-win. I really like that matchup. And they bring a big crowd with them too when they were in Norfolk. So that's another great thing. So the Navy fans are very passionate.
As we go toward the end of the season, of course, we're going to identify each of these dual meets as the season goes along here on the 3rd season of the ODU Wrestling Monarch Madcast. But the MAC championships this year, before we talk about the location being out in northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, since the move to the MAC, where have you seen the difference in terms of national exposure for Old Dominion Wrestling, and how much has it helped the program and the relevance of the school within the sport of wrestling?
Well, when you and I and Missouri and Old Dominion decided to join the MAC, we already knew that it was a very tough conference, and when we decided to jump on board, obviously, Missouri had to leave, the Southeastern Conference because we did not have wrestling, and Conference USA did not have wrestling. So, the MAC was the perfect fit for us. It does test you. You will have nationally ranked individuals on every team you wrestle. And if you're a MAC champ, again, you're going to be a very, very high seed at the national tournament. So, iron sharpens iron, and you got to put yourself out in the line anytime you wrestle a MAC team. So, I can't say but anything but great things, about the MAC conference. It's arguably right behind the Big Ten as the second toughest conference in the country as far as champs, All-Americans, and it has a very high percentage for the actual qualifier allocations for the NCAA tournament. Based on 9 teams, I think we had 56, 57 guys going through the tournament, so you almost have 6 guys out of every 9 guys in a weight class wrestling the NCAA tournament. So the MAC speaks for itself as far as the tough teams in it. It's such a different blend of teams because, you got the Eastern and Central Michigan, teams that we compete against. And, we have the Northern Illinois and the UNI and Ohio and Kent States and, even as far up as Buffalo. So you get to see all different types of styles. But I will say this, the coaches in the MAC are very good coaches, and the teams are always prepared. And it's pretty much a dogfight, like every dual meet. And like our first year at the MAC tournament, it was like a mini Big Ten tournament as I watched it unfold. The competition level was very steep. So you know, the MAC is either going to make you really tough or it's going to break you, one of the two. So if you're that MAC champ, you can be expecting definitely, or even if you get in second, third, or fourth, to be contending for All-American honors or chasing down the title.
And one thing to mention about the MAC this year is, of course, it's hosted by the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls. That'll be in the McLeod Center, which is their basketball arena, not West Gym, which is their very, very intimate and intense wrestling facility. You'll be making another trip out there this year, and Coach Doug Schwab, another former Hawkeye, and the intensity that coaches like Brian Smith bring at Missouri, the intensity that Doug Schwab brings to Northern Iowa, the calculating tacticalness that Tom Borelli brings at Central Michigan. I mean, it's a dogfight, not just athletically, but it's also a dogfight when it comes to the mind games that the coaches play. I mean, you've each match, it's like, all right, who's going to try to get one up on the other?
I would agree. But there's no question about that. I've seen some crazy things in dual meets on the road. That's all I can tell you. I've seen crazy stuff happen. West Gym is, I love going to West Gym because the fans are on top of you and they're not going to give you a break, and they start stomping on the sidelines and you can feel the mat vibrating, and the gym's about 150 degrees when you're wrestling in. I think they might turn up the heat when you're going through it for dual meets. I'm not sure what they're doing with the heating system. There's no way it can be as hot as it is in that place, And the fans, every one of those places in Missouri and Central Michigan, they're not going to cut you a break. They're going to be all over you trying to get any type of advantage possible to the athletes out there competing, which I think is awesome. So you get to go through a bunch of chaos, when you go on the road and compete against MAC teams, because, don't expect to get a break from the refs and don't expect to get a break from the crowd. So it's no different than the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's not, of course, as big as the NCAA tournament, but as far as intensity level, yeah, it's pretty high.
Well, of course, anytime you go back to the state of Iowa, you got a lot of those people that follow the Hawkeyes remember you, and they're gonna let you know about everything you ever did in a Hawkeye singlet. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, we wrestled you and I 2 years ago. I had people yelling at me, so I'm sure it'll be the same when we go back again this year. So.
Yeah, but you eat that stuff up though, Steve. Come on, you love it. You sit there on the bench, you're cackling, you're loving it. You're like, that was pretty funny.
I agree with that too. I think anytime you can get wrestling fans to be passionate, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I mean, they could be sitting there and saying nothing. Instead they're going to ride you, like a dog on a bone. So, I think it's cool that, the wrestling fans are very, very passionate in the sport. And Northern Iowa fans are very intelligent. They know what's going on. And they're out there on the mat. It's a state of Iowa, wrestling comes first in Iowa.
Been talking with Old Dominion head wrestling coach Steve Martin. Again, the season kicks off with the Blue Silver Intra Squad October 26th. Then the Southeast Open, in case that's what the actual name is, that's going to be in Roanoke this year on November 6th. Then Alumni Weekend, November 12th, football against Southern Miss, pregame social at the Edge. About an hour and a half, 2 hours before kickoff. Then the football game with Southern Miss. I'm sure many alumni will mingle following the game around campus and look at it and be like, man, this has changed. And then Sunday, November 13th, nationally ranked Missouri coming in for a tilt with the Monarchs at 1 p.m. at the TED. So be there, be square, and contact Mike Dixon at mjdixon@odu.edu if you're an alumni coming in from out of town, so we can keep track of who you are, and where you're going to be. And Coach Martin, final thoughts as we kick off this third season of the podcast. And, I don't know how many years it's been. I mean, you're in double figures now as a coach. That's kind of scaring me because that means I've been out of college as long as you've been the head coach at ODU.
Yeah, it's been a cool ride. The only thing I'd say is our schedule in November is pretty tough. And in December, I think we wrestled like four top 20 teams out of 5 dual meets. So, going from Mizzou, we hit Carolina, we hit NC State, we hit Northern Iowa. Those are all pretty darn tough teams in November and December. So we wrestle NC State at home on, I think, December 20th. And, everybody knows they had a great season last year. They have a very good coach in Papa Lizio, so he's one of my good friends. So, these our dual meet schedule is definitely something. If you're, if you're North Carolina, for UNC dual meet, we'd love to have you come check that out. And in addition, we're going to have a lot of kids that are competing the next day at the NC State Open. Whoever's not wrestling in that event, we're probably going to add another event on our schedule for the NC State Open for, if you add 6 guys or less, you can add another event that not have it count against your competition date. So we're looking at that too as well, although Mike's got to take care of that, the technicality of that in the schedule. But, we're looking forward to a dual meet schedule. We're looking forward to a tournament schedule. And we're also looking forward to these next 28 days to get ready, because 28 days from now we're going to wrestle at VTech. So, and that's what's happening down here.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.